have Bluefix. This is a woman delivering her baby. The baby's right here. Today we're at the Aswan Granite Quarry. We're going to see the unfinished office.
These birds are going crazy.
And Lexi Alford is here with us. Lexi, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
What are you doing with your life now that you've already checked off 195 countries?
Well, today I'm actually launching my YouTube channel. I've been stockpiling all of my footage from every country in the world, and I'm finally ready to sit down and edit it and share it with everyone. So, how did a 21-year-old girl break the world record for being the youngest person to travel to every single country on the planet? Well, it all started before I was even born. Instead of going to college, my mom started a travel agency when she was only 19 years old. And as a result of this, throughout my life, I've been able to tag along with my parents as they traveled around the world for work. When I was 12 years old and crammed into the backseat of a rental car driving down the Great Ocean Road in Australia, something significant happened. I was noticing all of these young people living in VW vans with surfboards on top, bumming around all the beaches and truly living life in the moment. And at 12 years old, this is the first time I remember daydreaming about what it would be like to travel for a whole year without having to work. With the idea of taking a whole year off of work and school to travel the world, I became motivated like crazy to start working and saving to make this dream a reality. Naturally, when you're 12 years old, it's hard to find people that want to hire a 12-year-old. That's why I started cleaning and painting on my dad's construction sites after school. Then I worked for his friends' sites and their friends. By the time I turned 15, I started training at my mom's travel agency to become a certified travel agent. Living rent-free at home created the perfect environment to save money. My family even gave me a car when I got my driver's license, and I started my first business as an airport chauffeur. I graduated early and got a degree from community college, so I'm also lucky not to have any student debt. Beyond saving, the most important aspect of this period in my life was that I learned everything about the travel industry, like how to find cheap flights and utilize points and miles, as well as gaining access to discounted rates that are only available to travel agents. 2 months into my gap year, I was crashing on my friend's couch, wondering how I could make my desire to travel the world have more purpose. The dream I had at 12 years old didn't feel meaningful enough. That night was the first time I counted up how many countries I had been to in my whole life. It was around 70. That was the moment that it dawned on me. I remember grabbing my phone and Googling what age is the youngest person to travel to every country. The first thing that popped up was the Guinness World Record for the youngest person to travel to every country, and the record was held by a guy that was over 24 years old. So there I was, an 18-year-old with 6 years of savings in my pocket. I had already traveled to 70 countries thanks to my travel junkie family, and I'm a travel agent that already had experience creating complex itineraries. I knew that very same night that I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't at least try to break this world record. In retrospect, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. to Yemen. So we are walking around the old city in Tripoli. Next stop, Afghanistan! I'm out on this random island in Guinea. As you can see, there is so much I'm excited to talk about, from how I budget travel to planning to how to do it safely, and of course, the coolest places to go to have an authentic experience. I'm the youngest person to travel to every country, but I'm the first to say that I've only just begun to scratch the surface of how much there is out there to explore. This world is so vast, and all my favorite places ended up being where I least expected them, and the most genuinely kind people that I met lived in the countries that we're told to fear the most. I have so many stories to tell, and now it's my mission to share everything that I've learned with you guys in order to help empower you to get out and see some of these places for yourself. If you're curious what that means and what's next for me, I'm going to be pouring all of my energy into creating videos. Hi, I'm Lexi, and I'm officially the youngest person to travel to every country in the world. Breaking a Guinness World Record is a lot more complicated than you would think. To be able to prove that I had been to all of these different places, I needed to submit passport stamps, visas, plane tickets, train tickets, taxi receipts, accommodation receipts, every single piece of paperwork you could ever imagine, as well as getting 2 signed witness statements from people I met within each and every country. That's almost 400 witness statements. It actually took me 6 whole months to finish my 7,000-page evidence documentation for breaking this record.
22-year-old Lexi comes from a small mountainous town in Northern California, and she's essentially been traveling since she was born.
So I started traveling when I was really young with my family, who owns a travel agency in our small town, and my parents would travel a lot for work, and thankfully they would never leave me at home when they went on their adventures abroad. And I actually ended up going to around 70 or so countries by the time I turned 18.
Contrary to what it may seem, Lexi did get an early college degree and first heard about the youngest person to visit every country when she was on a gap year.
2 months into my gap year, I realized that I wanted to make something more out of my travels, and I was wondering who was the youngest person to travel to every country. And that's when I looked up the Guinness World Record, and I found that the current record holder was 24 and a half, and I was 18 at the time.
So I have to ask this question. I get a lot of comments that are like, oh, but if you were a girl traveler, you wouldn't be able to do this. And I'm always like, no, I have many friends that are girls that travel, that go to Yemen by themselves. What is your take on solo female travel?
Yeah, I am a very strong advocate for female solo travel because it's been something that changed my life so much and empowered me so much as a woman. And one of the things that I wanted to learn when I was traveling to every country was, is it possible for a young woman to do this? And thankfully, I found out that there was more kindness in the world than anything else, and I was welcomed in every country without having any serious problems that were anything that wouldn't have happened anywhere else in the world.
Do you think it's significantly more challenging to do it as a female than a male?
I wouldn't say that it's significantly more challenging. If anything, I feel that, especially when I was filming and everything, a lot of people feel less intimidated by the presence of a foreign woman than they are by a foreign man. So I think that there are a lot of different advantages and disadvantages, but I had actually 2 rules for every country that I went to traveling as a woman. One of them is that I do not get intoxicated while I'm traveling by myself. So no drinking, no doing drugs or partying, anything like that. And I also don't go out at night by myself. Typically, travelers get in the worst kinds of situations when they're, drunk by themselves at night. And those thankfully are really avoidable situations.
I've always said that travel is the best education that one can get, and for Lexi, it's just incredible how much perspective she's gained at such a young age.
I think that traveling when I was so young made me mature more quickly because I had so many different perspectives on the world, from what life is like in rural Thailand to what it's like in Dubai. So it made me really grateful for everything that I had at home.
It's been super cool to meet Lexi in person after being online friends for so long. She's one of the most awesome, fearless, and courageous travelers out there, and we surely will never run out of things to talk about.
Lexi, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Now that I've finished traveling to every country, don't want to put another really big goal in front of myself. I know that I want to continue to travel, and I want to start capturing and sharing these stories to inspire other people to travel as well, and hopefully helping to give other people the tools so that they can experience more of our world for themselves.
Lexi, what is one message you want to say to the world?
One of my biggest pieces of advice for people who want to travel is that you can achieve anything that you put your mind to.
This is like the outtake after. We're just hanging out in the park, and I'm gonna have Chris every minute. You're just gonna say a country.
Okay.
Okay? So say a country.
Yemen.
Yemen. Okay. I was there 7 months ago. I did 8 days there, and that's by far the most dangerous country in the world.
Yeah, I can definitely agree.
I've seen your picture with you have a huge gun.
Yeah, the RBGs or something.
Yeah.
And Yemen is one of the most intense places I've been.
You went to Aden, right?
Yeah, I went to Aden. I was there. It was one of the first really off the beaten path places that I went. And I went with a complete stranger, Gunnar Garfors, who's also traveled to every country. I was there as a photographer for him. And
Really?
Yeah, I was there for...
What year?
In 2018, I was there. And it was an unusually stable time, thankfully, but getting off of the plane and having the fixer hand me a hijab and an abaya, and I had never worn any of those before, and putting that on in the car, and then seeing all of the rubble and the streets and everyone
I'm surprised
walking
you could
around
fly.
with the guns and everything. Yeah, it was wild.
The airport wasn't even open when I was there. No airports were open.
So
I had to go through the
crazy.
Omani border, and my tour guide wasn't even there. He sent his friend to the border to meet me, and it was a nightmare.
I woke up in the middle of the night, and there were 50 men blocking the entrance of our hotel, and we were the only people staying there, only
Yeah,
foreigners
same.
in the country. And they were looked like they were kind of fighting and pushing each other around and firing guns everywhere. It was
Really?
so terrifying. It was 2 o'clock in the morning.
God.
And I called my fixer. Of course, he didn't answer the phone. I woke up Gunnar. He jumped out of bed. It was what's going on? And it turned out that it was a wedding party.
Wedding, yeah.
That
Sometimes
was
they do kind of fire.
the scariest feeling ever.
Wow.
Brazil.
Brazil. I went to Rio 4 years ago for the Olympics, and then I spent 3 weeks in Florianopolis, south of that, and then I went to Belém in the north for 2 days. What about you?
Okay, nice. Belém was actually the last place that
Nice.
I traveled to. Originally, I went to Iguazu Falls, which was incredible, and I just spent 2 weeks there for Carnival in Salvador, and then went to Belém and went to the Amazon, and
How much acai did you eat?
so much.
It's I crave that more than anything else, and you can get it here, but it's no. It's
I've been making it at home,
Yeah?
every
Is it
day.
good?
Yeah, it's my favorite lunch.
awesome.
Sri
But-
Lanka.
Sri Lanka, you go first.
Sri Lanka, I didn't have the best experience in because I usually try to go kind of off the beaten path, and I found a national park that looked really interesting instead of doing the trains across the country.
Right.
And so I took a risk on that, and then I ended up just having running into issue after issue and kind of wasting a lot of time, which I hate when I'm traveling.
Was that the Elephant National Park?
Yes.
Were there elephants there?
There were supposed to be.
Yeah, you didn't see any?
I didn't see any wildlife when I was there, which was such a bummer.
I like Sri Lanka. I spent a lot of time in Kandy in the center, and then in Gal Beach in the south, and Colombo. I've been there twice.
Russia.
Russia, I only went to Moscow, which is why when people say, what are you going to do after you travel? I'm like, well, Russia is so big that it has 10 time zones from the western point to the eastern point. So it's I need to go see more places. But I spent a week in Moscow,
and I really liked it. I thought it's one of the coolest European cities, I think. Where did you go?
I kind of had the same story there. I only went to St. Petersburg, so I don't feel like I've gotten to experience all of it. And I really, one of the things I want to do this coming whenever we can travel again next year or something.
Siberian.
I want to do the Trans-Siberian.
That's like high on my list.
Oh, we should do it together.
Yeah, let's do it. You get on a train for like 2 weeks maybe, and you can stop where you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Siberia
so
just
fun.
sounds so surreal in my mind.
Yeah, that's like one of the places you hear about when you're a kid.
It's like, who's living there? What are they eating?
We should find out.
Let's do it.
Kenya.
Kenya, it's one of the friendliest countries in the world. I've been there like 4 or 5 times. Nairobi, I've been Mombasa and Kisumu, which is in the western side. But I really like Nairobi. It's like a really modern, fun capital city. Where did you go in Kenya?
The last time I was in Kenya, I was only transiting there, and I ended up spending 3 days there because the airports went on strike, and it was also when that Ethiopian Airlines flight crashed on its way to Kenya. So last time I was there was not
That sounds
very.
horrible.
It was horrible. It was a nightmare.
Those are back-to-back bad stories between Sri Lanka and Kenya.
Yeah, but my original trip to Kenya that was one of the places I went to when I was young with my family, and we went for the Great Migration.
Nice.
So it was one of the most surreal things to be like a young kid and seeing all of those animals.
That's so cool.
South Africa.
South Africa. Kruger National Park is amazing. Did you go there?
Yeah.
And then I went to Johannesburg. I didn't love it. I've been there twice. It's just like there's pockets of cool places in Joburg and pockets of not cool places.
More of like a kind of like a business or industrial area. It didn't have as much liveliness as Cape Town does. That was a beautiful, like the garden route.
Never went there.
Oh, you missed out.
I
went cage diving with the great white sharks.
You did that there? Oh god,
Yeah, it
I'm
was
jealous.
really crazy.
That's so cool.
Liechtenstein.
Liechtenstein, one of the smallest countries in Europe.
One of the hardest to pronounce as well.
Yeah, one of the hardest to pronounce. I remember I was couch surfing there back in my couch surfing days, and I stayed with a guy named Simon, and he was like, yeah, you can stay at my parents' house. It was like a palace. It was like 4 floors, and he's like, yeah, they're out of town, but we can just do whatever you want. We got on his motorcycle and we drove to like Austria, and we drove to Switzerland within 5 minutes. He's like, yeah, just ride my bike over the
The country's only like 15 miles wide or something. That was one of the first countries I ever went to by myself.
Did you go to Vaduz? That's like the capital.
I stayed in a hostel in Vaduz, and I got a little bicycle, and I biked the entire country.
Yeah, you can walk the country too.
It was so cool.
It's
that was
so green.
So beautiful, and like all of the different castles kind of perched throughout it, and there's just a whole like cathedral of mountains.
It looks like
surrounding
Switzerland. It basically is Switzerland. Like it's right next door. So.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's a wrap. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's been
this was so
great to
fun.
meet you.